You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, it's me again, Steve Adams, and you found your way back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, sponsored again this week by Triple Crown Coffee. This is the show where we bring you a variety of guests who have, who are, or even who want to hike, normally the Appalachian Trail, and some who add to the vitality and the almost mystic allure that the trail has. This week we're going to be talking with a guy who is planning for his hike next year, but he's already contributing to your lives as hikers. He's got a great story to tell, and Brian Bell, or Brother Bear, will be along soon. Also this week we have Sean Campbell again, or Bounce. I had a feeling that something wasn't quite right with Bounce this week, and a Facebook post after we'd spoken showed me why. I'll be sharing that with you after we've heard from him. Finally, the last chapter, an epilogue to Grandma Gatewood's extraordinary life story. Many of you have written to me about this book, and everybody seems to have loved it. Next week, I'll be starting with the new revised version of Keith Foskett's Balancing on Blue, so make sure you're here for that as well. But before we kick off the show with Brother Bear, there's this. When I used to get up in the morning on the Appalachian Trail, I would have sacrificed my firstborn for a good cup of coffee. Instant was a bit, blah, but how much more satisfying it would have been to have had some backcountry beanbags from Triple Crown Coffee. They do a light, medium and dark roast. In fact, you can get a mixed six-pack of their three flavours, named, not surprisingly, after the three trails in the Triple Crown, the AT, the PCT and the CDT. I love the backcountry beanbags because they are perfect for your favourite 2-cup stove, and they make a proper 16-ounce cup of joe. Alternatively, you can cold soak them overnight and try it that way. Check them out at triplecrowncoffee.com. You won't be disappointed, and you'll never want to drink instant coffee again. By the way, thanks so much for letting me know that you've bought some Triple Crown coffee. It sounds from my emails that you're certainly tasting the difference, as I did. Now settle back and listen to Brian Bell, or Brother Bear. Well, we've got another listener on the show today, and he's actually preparing for his through hike next year in February 2021. But it's the variety of other things that he does that made me want to chat with him. His name's Brian Bell, or Brother Bear. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And when you wrote, you said really nice things about the podcast, which is always good, of course. But then you shared with me all the trail-related stuff that you do, and I think that we're going to unpack everything as we go through. So let's start with how you got interested in the outdoors in the first place, because it hasn't always been your passion, has it?
Well, I'm turning it into the things I want to accomplish in the outdoor world, but I have been outside since I was, single digits, since I was 3-4 years old.
But you were when we were talking before, you said you kind of lost your way a little bit in the 20s, and I presume that's because you didn't go in the outdoors so much, or?
Right. Yeah. No, that was just I was kind of trying to figure out if the things I was supposed to be doing at that time, were congruent with what I wanted to be doing. School and work and job and all this stuff, and I just noticed that wasn't really fulfilling me on the way that I wanted it to be doing, and I had always felt that sense of fulfillment in the outdoors, and so I started working to align my path and career with ways that can keep me just as happy, as the outdoors always have.
And you felt that from a quite young age, then, you say?
Yes, sir.
Where did that come from? Your parents or what?
Yeah, so we've always been outdoorsy. My sister, I have an older sister, and we grew up in a household that, my parents took us camping for, a couple weeks in the summer each year as our vacation. And then everything we've ever done, I was in Cub Scouts early, and then Boy Scouts, and all the way through to an Eagle Scout. So I've had a really big outdoor influence in my life. And that used to be our summers. It wasn't this age we're in now where it's stay inside and PlayStation until dark. It was, we got put outside at sunrise, and we didn't come home until we heard our mom whistling for us at, well after sunset. And that was how we grew up.
It's funny, as kids, and it takes me back to when I was a kid about 60 years ago, when we used to go out all day long in the fields. It's unthinkable you'd allow your children as young as 4 and 5 years of age just to be wandering around. And it's almost like a sense of, like a homing pigeon probably. You find yourself drifting towards home and you're nearly home by the time your mother shouts out for you to come in, don't you? It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, the way our neighborhood grid was set up, it was our backyard conjoined with a friend of ours' backyard who was adjacent to another friend of ours' backyard. So it was just the neighborhood kids, and we all had, our backyards kind of facing one another. So we were at any given time inside one of 6 friends' backyards or off at the neighborhood, swimming pool in the backside. But my mom has this ability to, put your fingers in your mouth, fold your tongue, and whistle as loud as you can. And you used to be able to hear that. Or at least we could. Maybe our ears were trained, but we could hear that anywhere we were in the neighborhood, and that was the time to drop the bikes and hightail home and be back for dinner.
It's a great skill I've never learned in my 67 years. I've never been able to do that, and I always envy people who could do that. Now, so let's talk about what one or two of these things that you've done or you're doing. And as you say, it was interesting to me the way you put it, how you're trying to design your life to be in the outdoors more. So let's talk, mate, first of all then, about your role as a trail overseer in Shenandoah National Park with the PATC. How did that come about?
Yeah, so that came about, as I said, I grew up in the Shenandoah Valley on the other side of the mountain, and I've been in Shenandoah and the Blue Ridge Parkway and Alleghenies my whole life, and I did a lot of hiking, and I always would see their flyers, their little one-offs that they have, when you're at Big Meadows Wayside or anywhere else in the park. They've just got little information flyers, and so I started inquiring about it, and I looked them up online to see, and I had realized that you could actually become a member of their organization for like $45 a year, I think, which learned that was money that turned around and went right back into all the trails, and so I thought that was a cool way to give back. And then once I became a member, the first newsletter I got on the back page of that had information as to how more deeply you could get involved, by doing trail maintaining or shelter and cabin overseeing and things like that. So then I reached out to see what was available, and they had a section of trail that actually had just come up like 2 months after I'd become a member. So I met up with the current trail overseer for a section who was kind of adopting that one, fostering it for a little while. Hiked it with her, and she showed me how to do everything that trail needed to have done. And then they turned the reins over to me, and I go up there way more than 4 times a year, but you're required as a maintainer to have, basically one per season, kind of a visit and working thing that you submit a report for. But I'm up there all the time.
Do you take a somewhat paternalistic view over your little section of the trail?
I do, yeah, and it's so much fun, You're as with anything, you're always more invested in it and more caring about it when you've put your sweat and blood into it and things like that. But it's just a beautiful little spot too. It's just it bisects, it basically just cuts around Saddleback Mountain, so it's AT to AT, but it's about maybe 3 miles long. But it's on the western side, so it's on the eastern side, so there's no cell phone service, which is perfect. And there's 2 springs, which is great. And there's just a little, there's a privy there, near the old shelter, if anybody's out there that doesn't want to cat hole it or anything like that. But it's a great little spot.
So you spend a lot of time out there. And one of the things that you said, which I thought was interesting, you do love the solitude, don't you? And you said that you want to get as thorough as you can be.
Yeah, that's right.
So where does that come from? Are you not a social person, or you just love just the quiet of being just by yourself?
Yeah, I don't know. It's every time I ever tell somebody that I am solitude driven, it always comes as a surprise to them. So I guess I do an all right job of seeming extroverted or interacting well with society.
You play well with others.
Yeah, right. But like maybe that's the other side of it. Maybe because I'm passionate about things I want to get other people involved with, I put a lot of energy into making it a approachable organization and ideas, paint them as fun so people can see for themselves and join us. But a lot of that just kind of wears me out too. Just there's some days where the best days I've ever had, I haven't actually said a word to anybody. And so it's cool to like have that time where I can engage with everybody and like-minded people and be outside and doing things like that. But then it's also great where if I want to read a book for an hour and take a nap and then go hike 6 miles and then make coffee, and then if I don't have to say another word to anybody, that's great too. I do a fair bit of talking to myself, but that's different.
A friend of mine once said, some of my best days, he says, when my wife doesn't say a word to me.
Right. Oh, man, that doesn't sound good.
That's funny. It always made me laugh at the time. Yeah. he was talking about things like that. So, what you say you only meant to go up there, is it 4 times a year? But you go up there much more. What are the nuts and bolts of being a trail overseer? I mean, the word trail overseer suggests what it actually is, but what does it take to be a trail overseer? What skills do you have to bring to it?
Right. So it's great because first I want to make sure that anybody knows that they can become one, even if you don't currently have any skills, because they're more than willing to train you, which is a great way to get anybody involved. So it doesn't seem so elitist, when people are like, well, I don't have any knowledge, I can't be a trail overseer. You absolutely can, because they all teach each other. But
I'll interrupt you there, because that's interesting to me, because I know that there's a dearth of younger people doing this, isn't there? They do need more and more people, and I can see you. Obviously, the listeners can't see you, but you're obviously a young guy. How old actually are you?
I'm 33. I'll be 34
that's
a week
right.
from today.
You're in your early 30s. That's right. So that's kind of unusual, isn't it? Do these clubs reach out to younger people, or they just welcome younger people in because they just need more young blood in the organisation? I
think I haven't noticed, and maybe it's just because I haven't sought it out, but I don't know that they're reaching out to our window specifically, but they're very welcoming when we reach out. I think we're also in a really neat generation time frame where, current crises and everything aside environmentally, we have people coming to age that understand how important these places are. I know that kind of like tapered off at the end of, our predecessors and things like that. But we're getting to the point now where we're starting to realize, like, oh, these places can run out, and the ones that have been protected need to remain protected. And
sure.
A lot of people are kind of putting the rubber to the road and saying, okay, well, how can I get involved with it? Because I do love those places, or I like knowing that, bears have a place to live, and that exists, even if I can't go to it as often as I would like to. So they do a really good job of welcoming. And
being in Shenandoah, of course, you probably see plenty of bears out there in your little stretch, don't you?
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's like anything, like you get conditioned to, to what's immediate around you. In the Shenandoah black bears, they're beautiful. They're black bears, but they kind of now seem more like 150-pound groundhogs. When I see one, the fear isn't kind of like oh crap. It's more like, okay, well,
yeah, hi bear.
All right, yeah.
It's funny that the mindset is so different. I know that when I started my 2014 hike, I was terrified of the thought of seeing a bear, but then I couldn't wait to see one. Eventually, I saw 4 jumping out of a tree and videoed it as well, which was great for me. And I realised they were more scared of me than I was of them. They all ran away. It was great.
Right. Yeah, it's funny to think of too, and myself, who I'm usually fairly quiet when I'm hiking, how loud we actually are as, humans and things like that. You can be doing any kind of section and look out and realize that you're only 3 feet away from a deer who hasn't made any noise, or a bear who hasn't made any noise, but you can hear us coming from miles. And so I think we usually scare a great manner of wildlife off just because we're clanging pots, whistling, singing, tripping, kicking rocks, all that stuff.
Yeah, I must admit, last year we were playing, it's actually through Shenandoah, funny enough, about a year ago now, I think it was, we were going through Shenandoah, we were playing trail karaoke.
That's awesome.
Where one of us in the line of 5 would be singing a song and the others would have to guess who it was. It was terrific, great fun.
That's awesome.
So come back to the question about the nuts and bolts of being a trail overseer. What's required of you? You say they teach you. What do they teach you?
Yeah, so they teach you, some sections of the trails require different, expertise. If you have one that's got a lot of vegetation, you're going to have to knock a lot of that back every year. If you've got some that are more rocky in nature, you might have things like water bar reconstruction that you need to learn to work on and things like that. But they mostly...
That's hard work. That looks like hard work, the water bar reconstruction.
Oh my gosh. And so many... that's one thing I've really appreciated is it's made me really grateful for the trails and the conditions that we have now. Because when I'm walking on something and someone goes across a set of stone stairs, even though that section might only be 6 feet long.
Yes.
And you can just and just be done with it. That took somebody or multiple somebodies, multiple hard hours in getting those in, just so you can tripes right across it and go on about your day and not think about it. So stuff like that has definitely gotten a new appreciation from me.
To be fair, right, I would say that virtually every hiker that I met last year is so aware of how lucky we are that trail maintainers are out there, and how lucky we are that, and we always made a point of thanking them. And normally it was guys and women of my age who were doing it, which was quite remarkable to all of us. But yeah, we're aware. We know those steps don't happen naturally. We know that someone's put in the hard hours to do that. So. Do you sometimes go out for 2 and 3 days at a time, or do you every night get off, or do you stay in there when you got do you take a crew with you?
Yeah, so I've taken a group like twice, just from our nonprofit to kind of introduce them to places they might not have ever been, so they can see things like the wildflowers that Shenandoah has, or learn what poison ivy looks like in the wild, so they can avoid that.
To learn what it looks like before they sit on it.
Right. But it's I usually go out, and my section of trail is such that it doesn't require that much hard work from somebody. Like I can knock it out in a day, a long day, or I can break it up in 2 days. But it's in the Shenandoah backcountry section. So what I've done before is gone up and spent a day doing things like knocking some weeds back and opening up the trail wide, and then I'll camp that night. And then the next day, I'll go down and collect the deadfall that's been in the way on the way out. So I break it up over 2 days and get to, turn it into a backpacking trip as well. But
yeah, nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So it obviously feeds you in some way. What do you know what it does for you? Does it give you some form of reflection that you don't get elsewhere?
Yeah, I think it definitely does that. It 100% does that. But I think, honestly, the thing that's always appealed to me about backpacking and hiking culture and just being outside in general is just that no matter what is going on in your real life or your front country life, when you're out there, everything gets washed away, and it becomes the most basic, simple existence. What you focus on is food and shelter and immediate surroundings, and it just immediately kicks you into, or at least kicks me into, like a zen state where I know I don't have to worry about my emails dinging and going off because I don't have service, or I know I don't have to worry about traffic because I'm 12 miles from a road, or it just shuts off all the white noise of modern nonsense and just kicks it back to a nice zen time.
It's one of the things that I was so aware of, particularly last year, my trip last year as opposed to the 2014 trip, was how few options there are out there. And it's having so few options, which is so nice. You either walk, I'm talking in terms of hiking, you either hike or you don't, you either walk or you don't walk. That's about it. And I love the simplicity of that, because you're right, in so-called real life, I've got so many distractions around me, it drives me crazy. There are just too many distractions. And having no distractions out there is a great thing from time to time. And you started a non-profit called Keep Virginia Cozy, which is, unsurprisingly, at keepvirginiacozy.org. What was the motivation behind that? It's an interesting name as well, Cozy. What are you trying to achieve with that?
Yeah, it's, there's a bunch of small groups, volunteer groups, named things like keep such and such pretty, or keep it clean, or keep it, things like that. And those are all great, and their missions are all great, and we're all working on the same front to just make everywhere we're going better than when we found it. But those names also sound kind of sterile to me when I hear things like keep it clean, keep it neat, keep it tidy, all that stuff. The first thing that I think about when I hear the word cozy is something, regardless of where you are, that you're just immediately comfortable in every sense of the word,
It means falling asleep to me. Cozy.
Right, exactly.
The Z's it makes you Z's and fall asleep.
Right, but it's, I wanted the thought around that to be, whether you grew here or you flew here or you hiked here, you're welcome here. And those areas that mean the most to me and to us and to everyone who's out there in them, Cozy to me was the best word to choose for that, because that's what those places are for me. And so that's what we're working to keep them as.
And when did that start?
So we're approaching our 3-year anniversary now.
Cool.
Of being an official 501c3. We're approaching our 4.5 year of existence. But we didn't. The first 6 months, I thought it was just going to be a fun social group that I'd post about on Facebook and get some friends to come pick up trash. And then it started getting traction, so we needed to find a way for it to kind of pay for itself.
Sure. How do you fund it?
A lot of fundraisers, and a lot of it's entirely funded by other people's generosity, which has been an amazing, sometimes stressful, but
always stressful.
Always stressful. But we don't have things like overhead for office space and stuff like that. It's run out of my house and my Subaru. So we don't have things like that. We don't have everything's volunteer based. I'm the only one that works for it, quote unquote. But it's and we're not drawing a salary or anything. But it's self-sustaining before, where the supplies for our cleanups were coming out of pocket or things like that. But now we have donations throughout the year that fund our weekly cleanups, our Trashy Tuesdays, or our Wildlife Wednesdays.
I'm going to come back to those in a minute, actually, which I think are great names, by the way. So I was still understand the funding. So you speak to local companies around your section, or all over Virginia. Have you moved away from? Because I don't even know, where do you actually live?
Right, so we're in Richmond, Virginia.
Right. And have you moved out of that area throughout Virginia?
We are slowly coming out of that little epicenter there. We have a friend of ours lives in Charlottesville and runs a gear shop there called High Tour Gear Exchange, which is a great spot that you guys, anybody that's coming through Virginia should check out. It's all upcycled gear. Oh. So it's kind of like, how you can't go in and buy like a brand new, Big Agnes sleeping bag, but you could go in there and buy a used sleeping bag or a used Z-Pack tent or something. They have amazing stuff, but it's all consignment and things like that. So they're trying to keep things out there rather than just this kind of throwaway culture people have developed where they buy it, they don't use it, and they chuck it. They're rehoming all this cool gear. So we had it set up before the pandemic for them to be a further chapter of us. So every Tuesday while we were doing litter cleanups, they would be meeting at their shop and going out into their community and doing it. So we'd be going 2 places at once. Oh,
how interesting. Well, you're aware, and one of the things I discovered last year was the various breweries all the way up the Appalachian Mountains. My gosh, they were great. You should try to go with some more of those, I should think, because they are interested in their local community, and they kind of they certainly welcome hikers every single one I went to.
Yeah. No, they are fantastic. We have a partnership. Our biggest actual partnership is a brewery here in Richmond, Virginia, cool. Called Vossen Brewery, nice. Vasen. So they support us, some financially. We actually do like every one of our annual Earth Day events is with them, and then they're sub-sponsors of all of our, again, Trashy Tuesdays and things like that.
Right. But actually, I want to talk about the Trashy Tuesdays, which is such a great time. So Trashy Tuesday and Wildlife Wednesday, they probably are what they sound like, but tell us what they're all about.
Right, yeah. So they're exactly what they sound like. But Trashy Tuesday, it was funny because when we first started, I was thinking, okay, well, when do people usually have the most free time? And usually for a large percentage of the company, it's, the weekends and things like that. So we would try to do our first couple cleanups on a Saturday or, Sunday or whatever.
Sure.
But what I quickly realized, myself included, is on my days off, those are the days that I earned off. So I don't really want to work all week long to have to wake up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday to go pick up trash for 2 hours and do that. So we had some engagement, which was fine. And we're grateful for anyone that shows up to pick up anything. But then I started thinking, I was like, well, we could just do it for a certain season. So from Earth Day to Halloween, April to October every year, because you usually have longer daylight hours, things like that.
Sure.
And I was like, and people are already getting off work and stuff too. If we did it from 6 to 7 p.m., it's probably a lot easier to drive from work to there and then go back to Vossen and have a beer afterwards, and everybody gets to interact and socialize and all that stuff. And so when we started doing that, we went from seeing engagement of 7 or 8 people to this past year we had roughly 40 people showing it up.
I've seen some of the pictures. It's awesome. So you picked out substantial amounts of stuff, haven't you?
Yeah,
which is concerning in some ways.
Right. It's the most depressingly awesome number that there is, because the goal is to go out there and have nothing. And then we just wind up getting to hang out outside and enjoy it. That'll never be the case, but that's the goal.
You've put a number up there, though, haven't you? It's a lot.
Just last year we removed over 5,000 pounds. And then to date, so far, we've removed over it's about 7.5 tons from 2017 till 2020.
That's kind of tragic. That's kind of tragic. So, who are not so much who are the worst culprits? What is the worst sort of thing you have to take out? I mean, people are careless, aren't they? They often don't think about it either.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not excusing that behavior. I'm just saying they just don't think about it.
Right. No, apathy is for sure the number one problem that we have to face. From people thinking like, oh, whatever, my one cigarette butt's not going to clog the earth, but 376 million Americans think that, and that's, you know what I mean? That kind of thought.
I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
So that's the bummer. Just trying to come up against people's apathy and opening their eyes is different. But like material-wise, the stuff that we find the most of is just general, basic garbage. Like, thankfully, a lot of it's recycling, and we can end up doing some pretty cool things with that, which we have this past year. But, a lot of it's just lazy stuff. It's napkins, paper napkins from people's picnics or dinners, or Dixie plates, or, Snickers wrappers and that kind of stuff. And tons and tons and tons, infinite cigarette butts, that kind of thing.
Yes, isn't that amazing? That's sadder than it should be, but I think it's a wonderful thing. So that's Trashy Tuesday, and Wildlife Wednesday is what?
Wildlife Wednesday is a partnership we struck up with the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. So they have, teams of biologists, people that comprise their teams to talk about things like bats and, local Virginia fauna, things of that nature, which a lot of people, myself included, I know what kind of animals I can expect to see, but I might not know anything about what they do.
Sure.
But a lot of us also grew up with like stigmas like, oh my God, there's a possum out in the yard. Like, it's either going to go away or somebody's got to kill it or something like that. Some completely irrational thing. But, if you don't like Lyme's disease and you hate ticks, you need to support your local possum because they eat 5,000 ticks like in a summer,
I did not know that. That is an amazing statistic as well.
Right. I mean, it's stuff like that's crazy that no one, myself included, would know, because they're pretty intense looking animals. And so you think that it's got to be bad or something like that.
Yes, I know what you mean. So there's a big educational component of really the site, isn't it? You're just trying to make people more aware of how important it is to keep Virginia cozy, which is kind of a nice thing. So where do you see yourself taking Keep Virginia Cozy? Are you going to expand to the rest of Virginia, or are you going to generally keep it rather local?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. We're trying to figure out ways to do exactly that. The goal would be to do enough front country things like the Wildlife Wednesdays and that kind of thing to fund, because those are paid events. Building bat houses, those costs have material costs, so
sure,
those things are brought into that. But if we could do enough front country things and get enough sponsorships and fundraisers to do more backcountry things, I would really, really enjoy being able to expand our reach as far as like taking over swaths of trail in like the George Washington and Jefferson National Forests and other state parks, and striking up deals with them to just help, because all of those places that do amazing work more often than not have skeleton crews, and so a lot of important work gets put further down the list because they just have other things that are more pressing. But if we could be a kind of a relief system for that, like, hey, we need to do this, but we don't have the manpower, so if these are some projects you could tackle, here's a list of things you could start on. And we'd love to be able to do more stuff like that.
I think that is so laudable what you're doing. I know that there'll be listeners thinking, oh my God, I couldn't do what he's doing, but God bless him for doing it. Because it's necessary, but it needs people like you who want to step up and do it. And I know that you're also an instructor of a solo wilderness medicine school, and you teach wilderness first aid and CPR. And I presume these are just extensions of your clear interest in the outdoors. How important do you think it is for somebody to learn wilderness medicine or first aid?
I think at some level it's important for everyone to know first aid, obviously for reasons that just can crop up from anything. You could be working in your backyard and you hit something with your lawnmower and all of a sudden you have a huge gash in your leg and you need to know, and you live by yourself, you need to know how to figure that out.
Yeah.
The first aid component is
it's called 911, by the way.
Right. But if you're out doing a section of trail maintaining,
and if you're out the cell service as well,
right? Yeah, it's just good to know, know some of those things. Wilderness first aid and wilderness first responders are also not substitutes for front country medicine. I want to be upfront about that. It's basically more, we can MacGyver a way to keep you alive until you get to a hospital. Sure. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
But things like CPR are a really big component of what we try to teach and try to get people to do too, because that's important for everyone. It's pretty scary when you look at the numbers of times that CPR actually saves somebody versus the amount of times it's used. Like the rescue rate is pretty low, but it exists. It's still there. So if we can teach somebody how to, in a split second, realize, okay, this person is down and they need CPR,
sure,
rather than kicking into the, oh my God, I'm in panic mode, what do I do, while they die, you might have a chance of saving somebody's life. It might be small, but it's there. So that's just also fun, because I really enjoy, I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did until I went up to take my Wolfer, which is wilderness first responder, and then to be able to instruct it, you have to be one higher than what you're teaching. So being able to teach wilderness first aid, I didn't really think I'd enjoy it, honestly. I just wanted to know that stuff for myself as a just in case.
Yeah. But it's great that you enjoy it as well. Yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You're going to be popular on the trail next year, and we're going to get to that now, because so we now know that you've kind of earned your ticket to the ball, and you're going to do a flip flop next year. What's the plan?
Right, yeah. So for years, I've been planning on doing stuff, and I've done small sections here and there, but I finally kind of got to the line in the sand where I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I just want to go ahead and just, start with an actual goal.
By the way, Brian, just so you know, that on audio, that the clapping hands and the clicking fingers really come out sharp.
Oh, sorry. No, okay. Sorry. I will refrain from that.
That's okay.
But yeah, I wanted to start, and I wanted to just kind of, make some actionable steps towards finishing it. The Appalachian Trail has always been a goal of mine, and I would just enjoy someday, even if it takes me, multiple years to finish it and check off small sections here and there. It's something that I want to complete, and this is a way that I can go ahead and start that officially. So I'm going to start in Harper's Ferry,
right,
and go south, actually.
Okay.
Because I have a number of friends who have expressed interest, in at least doing, Shenandoah with me, or down to McAfee's Knob section and things like that. And it's nice being from this part of the area. So coming south, I'm basically hiking past all my friends who want to join me on any of it. They're welcome to. So that's going to be great. But I've got from February 7th, which is my tentative start date there, coming south until April 20th is when the first leg has my time frame. So I think that's like 78 days or something like that. Which, I did the math on the stuff, and because I'm rusty by my numbers, but I think Harper's Ferry is like 1,012 or something like that. I
seem to remember for some reason I got it in my mind as 1,007, but it may be 1,012 now. I think that was from 2014. It was 1,007. Yeah,
right. So it's like right around in that window, and I did the math on it, and that it equals out to, from Harper's to Springer, roughly 12 miles a day. But as we all know, some of those days might be 5 miles, some of those days might be 0 miles, and some of those days might be 26 miles.
That's right, yeah.
So, so if I can roughly stick to some sort of fun plan and knock on wood, not have to, give myself some wilderness first aid, then I'd like to hopefully knock that leg out between February and April.
That's been nice. And I'm wondering actually how you're going to be on the trail, because you know so much that people shouldn't do, don't you? Will you continue to evangelize for the cause when you're out there? And which does make you risk being a pain in the arse to some people, doesn't it?
Right. Well, I think...
Or are you just concentrating on dragging your body towards the finishing line?
I'm going out there for my own reasons. I'm more than happy to, if I see someone, as I would hope anybody would, doing the wrong thing or being disrespectful in the outdoors, speaking up to protect those places for everyone. But I'm 100% not a door-to-door salesman about any of the stuff that I have behind my line. I would just as soon walk past a hiker and say, hey, enjoy the trail, and we go on about our business, rather than feel like I need to express some sort of, because my knowledge is always changing too. I do know some things because I've taken time to learn them, but I don't know I don't know squat in the grand scheme of things. So I'm always learning. So I don't at all pretend to offer up any knowledge.
You're totally underplaying it. You know a heck of a lot more because you've done a lot of the right things. I can't think of anything you've said so far that I could disagree with at all, and how valuable that will be on the trail, going forward. I think, it's going to be an amazing thing for you to do. How are you actually preparing for the journey itself? Because whichever way you look at it, it's still hard work. I mean, it's great fun, but it's tough. So how are you preparing for it physically?
So I have at-home workouts that I get around to. I listened to your episode. I think it was just this past week's episode, or maybe I caught one late from the week before. But a guy you were talking to who takes longer cycle rides now than he used to.
That's right, Keith Foskett. Yeah, Fozzie.
Yeah. So I take really long bike rides, which I really greatly enjoy. Not so much right now because in Virginia, I'm sure as in Florida, it's 95 degrees and the humidity's right there beside it at 94%.
I've been walking I've been doing 50 miles a week walking around my local area, which is quite it's about 7 miles a day, obviously. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
But I go at about 5 to 6 in the morning. It's then about 81 degrees, feels like 90. It says.
Ugh.
Oh my gosh, it's just ridiculously warm. So I'm sure it's like that over there as well.
Yeah, it's oppressive heat. But while I'm here in town, I do things. Richmond has an amazing trail system. The James River Park system is wonderful, and there's a loop that you can do that connects the Buttermilk Trail from the south side of the river to the North Bank Trail, obviously on the north side of the river.
Yeah.
And it's just over 6 miles long, so that's a great loop to do. Pocahontas State Park is 30 minutes south of here. Shenandoah and Blue Ridge Parkway are 2 hours west of here, so I actually go over there a lot and do some shakedown hikes and stuff.
So you're ready for it anyway, aren't you? You know what you're doing, and that. What are you most looking forward to?
Honestly, I'm just most looking forward to just a different camp every night and just different time spent outdoors every day. I want to, Virginia is great, and I have the gift of being from here and also getting out into these areas as often as I would like, but as with everything, I've seen surprisingly little of a lot of things. And
sure.
If I'm from Virginia and I want to claim Virginia and I'm running a nonprofit for the betterment of Virginia, I want to see as much of it as I can. So I want to take my time and just fully soak in every aspect of it that it'll let me soak up. And, that goes with every piece of the trail too, but I'm just excited to get out there.
That's so cool. Well, look, there's actually one question I missed out, which I wanted to ask you actually, because I wasn't quite clear about it when I read it on your website. What on earth is Plogging on the James?
Oh, man, I'm so glad you asked.
Great name.
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, so we actually that's our annual Earth Day event that we do.
Uh-huh.
And it's, usually it's around Earth Day. This year it has been bumped back 3 months, so it's coming up July 25th.
All right.
Is our Earth Day anyway, 3 months later event. But it's called Plogging on the James, Plogging.
Yes.
And Vossen Brewery that I had mentioned earlier, they're Scandinavian. That's their whole lineage, and their founders have roots there. And plogging is actually the Scandinavian word for trail running and litter collecting.
Oh, wow. How cool.
So it's funny because this will be our third one doing it, and to date, no one has trail ran yet. Everybody just enjoys being out there and seeing the trails and cleaning up trash. But yeah, so that's we just go out and we do that loop that I was speaking of earlier, Buttermilk North Bank, and there's some other local outdoor climbing areas, rock climbing areas that we focus on, and we just collect as much trash as we can inside of 2 hours, and then we weigh it all up. Last year we got out over like 400 pounds. I think the year previous we got out like around 320.
As you say, it's sad. It's sad that you have to, but you know what? I think it's just great stuff. And how can if anybody lives nearby or even not that nearby and wants to join in, how do they go about doing it, Brian?
Right. Yeah. So we have our Instagram. You can follow us is just at Keep Virginia Cozy, all spelled out, all one word.
Yeah.
Our website, as you mentioned earlier, is just keepvirginiacozy.org.
Yeah.
And our Facebook is the same. It's just facebook.com/Keep Virginia Cozy. So we post all of our events on Facebook. We have an events page there. And we do our best to get those out at least a month or two in advance so people can make arrangements to show up if they want to. Like we have one this evening that starts today that kicks off our next series of fundraisers events. But our Instagram and our Facebook page, and we're also on a website called meetup.com. Which is a great little spot, but it's Yeah, it's
I
cool.
know.
It's like
I
mobile.
tell you what I'll do. You send me all the links you've got, and I'll put all those in the show notes. So anybody can find out about it by just clicking on the links in the show notes, which should be very cool. But look,
that'd be awesome,
I'm so glad you reached out to me. I know it was just to thank me for the show, for which I'm also grateful that you enjoy the show. But the work that you're doing just has to be highlighted. So I'm proud of you. I think you've done amazing stuff, and I'm really grateful that you came on the show.
Well, thank you. I'm thankful for all your listeners and everyone that gets out there to enjoy these places. And I'm thankful for places that are these organizations we can all get involved with to enrich these areas. The PATC and countless other ones up and down the trails. They're the ones that, we're just happy to be able to help them. But I'm glad all of those exist, and I'm glad everybody can get outside on this awesome section we've got.
Okay, buddy. Well, good talking to you. Take it easy, all right? And enjoy your hike next year. I'm sure you're going to have a fantastic time, all right?
Oh, thank you so much.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Bye.
What a decent bloke, eh? He has such a passion for the trail and has ordered his life to spend as much time as he can in the outdoors. His Keep Virginia Cozy initiative is one of those wonderful projects that good people do. He saw a need and he's taking care of it. All that trash, though, drives you crazy, doesn't it? Brian kindly sent me a Keep Virginia Cozy shirt, so support him if you live anywhere near there and do some good work for the trail. By the way, I'd forgotten to ask him why he's named Brother Bear, and as he wanted to tell me, I flipped the record button on again. I've come back on because I forgot another question I wanted to ask Brian, which is why on earth are you Brother Bear?
Yeah, so I know it's unusual for some folks to come to the trail with a trail name rather than having one bestowed upon them, but sure. My sister actually gave me the one that I've got now, and it's been my favorite thing. It's Brother Bear, and it's been for years that's been what she calls me, and it's my favorite name of all time, and I've kind of outfitted it to be involved with everything that I've got going on. I have my trekking poles. I have a wooden bear head mounted on the top of one of my trekking poles, and my niece, her daughter, is just now 17 months old, and to her, I'm Uncle Bear. So Brother Bear is just my favorite name. I want people in real life to call me that.
Okay, from now on, I will only ever call you Brother Bear.
Right on.
Okay, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
So there you go. Before we move on, I want to thank those of you who continue to support our shows on the Hiking Radio Network with a financial donation. I couldn't do it without some financial support. If you'd like to chip in a donation, please go to the mightyblueontheat.com podcast page and find the donate button there. I thank you all. Now bounce and listen to him as he confesses that the whites are kicking his butt. See if you can hear what I'm hearing. We're back on with Bounce. Hi, Bounce. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. You sound a bit tired today. Are you okay?
Oh, the whites are kicking my butt. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, before we get on to the whites, and you knew they would kick your butt, by the way, didn't you? Just so you know.
Yeah. I just thought I'd be stronger, So.
It's surprising, that there's that old thing about when you get to the whites, you've done 80% of the miles and use only 20% of the effort, and you never realise how tough they can be. But once you get into them, they are just magnificent, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. We didn't get a view on top of Moose, but I got views going up.
Right.
It's neat going through the smoke coming over and feel like you're on Mars.
Yeah, I had that feeling very much. As soon as you get above tree line and Moosaluk, I think it felt to me, I remember giggling out loud because I thought it was so exciting. It's like a moonscape, isn't it? It's just an amazing sight to see. So which way did you go up? Because I've been there twice now. And I went up the north side both times where the waterfall runs down because it seems to me a better ascent than descent. Did you go up? Was that a car passing you, by the way?
Yeah, I'm right on the side of the road.
Right. Okay, no worries. So which way did you go up?
I took the standard AT route. I came down that you're talking about. That was terrible. Yeah, that's an awful down, isn't it? I've tried it. I'll say I only did it that one way both times, and I think if I ever did it again, I think I'd probably go that route as well. The down,
And the uphill's quite a long way as well, isn't it? It's quite a slog going up Moose Lark as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was like 4.6 to the peak from the base on the standard northbound route.
Yeah.
But it's a quick down. I mean, it's like a 1.5 down from there.
Yes, it is. It really is. But I slip up way too often, and I think I would have slipped up a lot if I'd gone down that way. So I just went the other way. So did you get to see Molly, by the way, before she went to the Continental Divide?
No, I did not make it in time. I got burnt out just trying to do those miles to get up there in time, and just never made it close enough. I was about 3 hours away, but with her leaving for Colorado, I didn't want her to have to run all the way down there.
Right. But she's back, don't you?
I saw. I didn't have service for very many days, but I did. As I was walking here, saw that she had a mishap, and I want to talk to her because that's scary.
Yeah. But I'm going to call her. I've actually messaged her, and she's okay now, I think. But yeah, she got a bit banged up. But we'll talk about it another time. Mm-hmm. So you went up Moose Lark, and where are you now? You say you're on a road. Where are you walking to now?
I have a package to pick up in Lincoln, so I'm just on that road that runs down to Lincoln and Woodstock. I forget what it's called, but it runs straight down.
So how far off the trail are you going?
I think it'll be like 6 miles till I get into town.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
You don't
I
need
get
that,
a lot of hitches. Nobody picked me up. I'm 6 foot, hairy.
Yeah. You're 6 foot, hairy and smelly. Yeah.
Right.
But in the past, people would pick up. But I suspect with all this COVID, they're not picking up at all, are they? Very rare.
So I get a couple every now and again. I'll get a hitch. I generally just plan to walk it. If I'm with a girl or a female, then it seems to be like normal years. But me by myself, it seems to be no one wants to pick me up. I mean, I have a mask and everything, so I don't know.
Well, I wonder about this. So you must have gone into town quite a few times, or quite, often enough. What's your longest walk you've had into town so far then?
I skip. I've planned it pretty well, so this will probably be one of the longer ones. Yeah, I planned it pretty well. I haven't had too many long trips. I'm carrying peanut butter and jelly as heavy food because of this year. The beginning it was 10 days between. You didn't know if you were going to be allowed in the town.
Sure.
So I just kind of got used to it and try to avoid the long walks into town, knowing that I can't get a hitch if I'm by myself.
You managed it well then, because I can remember several places that if I hadn't got a hitch, I just would have been a nightmare to get in there. There's some quite long journeys into town sometimes, aren't there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, most of the time, and see, all through Virginia, I was hiking with a female. She was part of our group, so we got hitches all through Virginia. It wasn't until this north side that I've been kind of stuck. And, you never get a hitch in New York, so didn't expect it there.
Yeah. So I was trying to think, because I got short notice that you could talk now, so I haven't prepared for this at all. So now I think about it, I'm trying hard to think the order of things in New Hampshire. You did Moose Lark. What's the next big one, or are they just all one after the other?
Then it was the Kinsman. It was one after the other, but it was Moose Lark, then the Kinsman's, and then I don't know what's in front of me. I didn't look past today.
Oh, right. Well,
but in that case, Kinsman's get up to 4K.
Yeah, I know it does. And it's a long way up there as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's just one after the other. That's why I'm beat. I mean, I'm tired. I might take a day off.
Well, when we last spoke, you were just coming into New Hampshire. So how many miles have you done since then? You haven't gone that far then, have you? Or have you?
No, I haven't. I haven't gone very far, maybe 60 miles since we talked. So last year when I got off trail, this gentleman picked me up in Maine and took me back to his family's camp and just treated me like, he never knew me before, but treated me like we're family. So when I got up here, it was raining on Friday, and he's a mason, a stone mason. Right. And he's like, hey, man, it's a Mason's holiday. You're close to me. So I hung out with them and him and his family. They took me out to a lake. We hung out on the sandbar. They took me some places the trail don't go by that are just magnificent.
Really? Tell us about that. Where was that then?
So there's south of the AT, I forget the name of the mountain, but the AMC has I wish I could name it the mountain, Brawford or something like that. But the AMC has a hut up there, and there's a back trail into this waterfall that, just another one of the mountain waterfalls, but this one's real wide. I mean, I took some pictures of it and stuff. Yeah. And then the lake is north of Plymouth, south of the Barn Door Hostel. And if you go to that Barn Door Hostel area, that's where I was.
Right.
And that's about 15 minutes south of the AT.
So basically, you've been on holiday then, been on vacation from the trail.
Yep, for a couple of days, but then he dropped me back off on the mountain.
Yeah. So what's the plan for getting through? When do the huts start? I don't recall when they start. I'm just trying. I wish I'd had my map with me actually.
Well, I went by one already in the Kingsmans. I didn't stop in,
right.
But there is a hut already started. There's nothing on Moose, but right after Moose, I think it was like 8 miles after Moose.
So you're gonna stay in Lincoln tonight?
We'll see. I need a shower, get the mail dropped, see where I'm at time wise then.
Yeah. Cool. You do sound quite down actually. Is this getting to you a little bit?
Yeah, it is. I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough. I'm by myself. I definitely wanted to hike with some others through this section just because the weather turns on you and
sure.
It's hard. I mean, the motivation is tough.
Yeah, I bet it is.
But
yeah.
No one came, and I couldn't wait any more days. So we'll see. It's just tough. It's wearing on me a little bit. My hip, it bothers me when I'm not 100%, and that hip just is constantly in my head. You know.
Right. Are you taking plenty of vitamin I?
Yeah, I'm out of it, so I'll get some more in Lincoln. I got some Tiger Balm. Yeah. No, I mean, it is what it is. I expected this. I knew it was coming. It hit me. It is what it is. I got to finish the trail.
Yeah, yeah. And what have you revised when you think you're going to get there, or are you still planning on when you do get there?
No, I was originally thinking I'd be there in 31 days if I kept my 13-mile-a-day average I've had over this year. But my guess is it'll be 41 or 50 days at this point.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to take a couple days off in between. The hip's better when I give it 2 days. When I hike on it for 3 days, then it's screaming. So it's screaming right now.
Oh, geez. Well, I feel for you, man. I mean, I know that feeling. I had that feeling several times myself, and not having anybody to moan about it to is kind of disappointing, isn't it? You know, perhaps you give yourself a day or two off, then people will catch you up.
Yeah, well, so I met this girl just a section hiker going the other way, and she had some people's names signed on her bag that were behind me. So I don't know if I can. If I can track hikers this year, because I don't know if everybody's walking straight north.
Well, what you could do,
I'm not sure what's going on.
You could, when you get into town, you could post in Facebook where you are, and if there's anyone around, I'm sure they'll let you know.
Sure, that's what I'll do.
Yeah. Okay. But look, so I don't like hearing you sound down. So try to keep your pecker up and make sure that. Actually, I'm not sure I should say that in America. Is that the expression in America? Keep your pecker up. I'm not sure.
Well, I'd like my pecker to stay up.
I'm not sure. I might keep that in. I'm not sure. We'll see. but try to keep your morale up. Let's say then, and we'll speak again next week. But I know what it's like. So this is not easy. It's always a slap round the face, and you're getting that slap round the face right now, aren't you? Really?
Yes, sir. And then I appreciate talking to someone like I think about it. Like, you did this twice. Guy's got to be a madman. I mean, I'm dying here. I'm like, oh my God, another hill. Like, another 4,000-foot climb, really?
Yeah, you're a young man. You're a young man as well. Well,
so me complaining to you is, I can't believe I'm doing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know whether you know, but I applied for that chief hiking officer job for the Devil's Backbone Brewery. I put my application in the other day because I thought to myself, I'd love to go for a third time. And as I said, when I put my application in, I said, if I go for a third time and I complete it, which I hope I will, I'll be one of only 4 people to do it in my 60s, to do it 3 times in my 60s, rather. But that means I'll have to go the year after in 2022 to make it the 4th time in my 60s because nobody's done it 4 times in their 60s. So that's my ambition right now.
Well, if there's somebody that can do it, I think it's you, to be honest with you. And if you get that job promoting that beer, I'll hang out with you.
We could be the
I'm not
guys.
hiking, though. I'll bring you trail magic.
Yeah, that's right. Trail magic. Come to share a beer with me. Okay, man. Well, keep your chin up, all right? And we'll speak again soon, all right?
All right, sounds good.
Take it easy, buddy. Bye.
Bye-bye.
As you heard, I was concerned about him, and when I was on Facebook this morning, I read something. I spoke with Bounce, and he was okay with me sharing this. And there's a picture of him now. And he says, "This is what my eyes really look like. I've decided to go 100% sober. I've been drinking since I was 14 and smoking weed every day since redeploying back to the United States in 2006. I don't know how this is going to go, and for the past 2 days it hasn't gone well. Most people won't recognise this new person, and maybe I won't have the same group of friends. It might take me a long time to finish this trail. I'm okay with all of it. Sobriety is the right path for me." So, the poor bloke is kicking the habit while the whites are kicking him. He seems to be struggling, and I just hope that he's able to continue what he started, both on this hike and on his path to sobriety. I've got a family history of addiction, and I feel for the guy, and I admire him so much for putting it out there and making himself accountable. I also want to thank all of you who said such kind words about my attempt to become the Chief Hiking Officer for the Devil's Backbone Brewery. I put the application video on my YouTube account and shared it on the Hiking Radio Network Facebook page. Your kind comments make me excited by the prospect of going on another 80 through hike. I really hope I get it. Now, the conclusion of Ben Montgomery's great book, Grandma Gatewood's Walk. I was full of admiration for her feats before I read the book, and now, well, I'm just in awe of her. And of course, if I do get that CHO gig, I'll be in her company, as having hiked the AT 3 times in my 60s. How about them apples? I'll see you next week. Chapter 21, Monuments. 1973. If there was one place Emma loved, it was a deep and breathtaking sandstone gorge in the hills of southeastern Ohio, a place called Old Man's Cave, which was carved by streams and percolating groundwater. Through the gorge, the stream snakes through a gallery of features, including waterfalls and eddy pools, diving 100 feet in half a mile. The moist and cool hollow preserves typically northern trees such as the eastern hemlock and Canadian yew, which have survived since the glaciers retreated thousands of years ago. In the winter, the falls freeze over, creating beautiful ice formations. The gorge is called Old Man's Cave because it was once home to a recluse named Richard Rowe. Rowe had worked for his father's trading business on the Ohio River until the early 1800s, when he took to the woods to live in solitude. There came a time when he disappeared for several years and was presumed dead, but then he returned. He told an acquaintance he had walked to the Ozark Mountains to find his older brother, but learned he was dead. Rowe told his brother's widow that he had buried a stash of gold in a gorge in Hocking Hills, and that he would fetch it and return to take care of her. Back at his cave, he went out one morning to get a drink of water. He used the butt of his musket to break the ice, and it discharged under his chin. Trappers found his body a few days later, wrapped him in bark, and buried him on a sandy ledge at Old Man's Cave. "They're beautiful, these cliffs," Emma once said. "In fact, I think it's more interesting than anything I saw on the Appalachian Trail." Every January, starting in 1967, she put on a red beret and led a 6-mile hike through Hocking Hills, down by Old Man's Cave. People came from across the state. She made lots of new friends. In 1972, when she was 84, it was her job again to lead, to set the pace, but she was having trouble coming down. Her legs bothered her below the knees, mostly down the back. She'd been trying to work the pain away with exercise, but she couldn't overcome it. "I feel like taking off to the woods," she'd tell a woman a few months later, "but I don't know whether I'd get back." The trail by Old Man's Cave is steep in spots, and one must climb gnarled tree roots that grow alongside the path. Age was finally wearing her down. She tried to traverse the winter landscape and struggled. When she could no longer do it safely, several men carried her over the rough spots. The following year, 1973, sensing it might be her last event, the organisers held the winter hike in her honour. They made her a hostess, and she stood at the trailhead in her signature beret, greeting her old friends. More than 2,500 hikers showed up. At the lunch break, she was presented the Governor's Community Action Award for her outstanding contributions to outdoor recreation in Ohio. She took a bus trip that spring with an open-ended $85 ticket, visiting 48 states and 3 Canadian provinces. She met friends or family nearly everywhere she went. She sent a postcard home in May. Pictured on the front was the Pennsylvania Turnpike, the world's most scenic highway. Her handwriting was shaky. "I'm having a nice trip," she wrote. She stopped in Falls Church, Virginia, to visit Ed Garvey, who penned a popular book, Appalachian Hiker, A Venture of a Lifetime, about his thru hike in 1970. She told him about the night on top of a moss-covered mountain she couldn't remember the name of, when the stars looked like a million pinpricks of light in a blanket of darkness. "It was just as clear, and it looked like I could almost reach out and get the stars and pull them down," she said. "Oh, I lay there and watched them. It was so nice, and I enjoyed that night. The little growth on there was just about so high and just as thick as it could be. There's a lot of little pines around there, and I got down to sort of break the wind, you know. I'll tell you, that was a nice night. I lay there and looked at those stars and that moon." On the last leg of the bus trip in Florida, she felt air conditioning for the first time, and it was cold and unnatural upon her skin. She felt slightly ill when she got home in late May and blamed it on the artificial cool of the bus. It did not slow her. She prepared the earth for a garden, hoeing and tilling. She planted half-runners, potatoes, nasturtiums, corn and beans. She wrote some letters to distant family. She went to Sunday school and church and played a game of Scrabble with a friend. She cleaned around the flower bed and swept the walk. She worked in a garden again on Saturday and called her son Nelson on Sunday to say she wasn't feeling well, that something was wrong. This from a woman who had been sick just once in her life. Nelson dispatched an ambulance and raced to the hospital, flanked by a sympathetic highway patrolman, and found his mother in a coma. The next morning, June the 4th, 1973, Nelson's wife and sister were sitting beside Emma's bed when she opened her eyes, closed them again, then hummed a few bars of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." The obituaries said she gained national and world fame for her hikes. One quoted her daughter, Rowena, who told how Emma had learned of the trail from a magazine article. She said, "If those men can do it, I can do it." The Ohio Senate passed a resolution in her memory, noting her accomplishments, that she was a founder of the Buckeye Trail and that she had inspired many, particularly young people, toward an interest in and an appreciation for the outdoors and in the relationship between man and his natural environment. They lowered Emma Rowena Gatewood into the ground on a pretty hillside in the Ohio Valley Memorial Gardens in Gallia County. Her marker says, simply, Emma R. Gatewood. Grandma. June the 7th, 2012. Lucy Gatewood Seeds sits alone inside the lodge of a mountain resort in Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania, waiting for a family to dress for dinner. She stares out the large glass windows at the tall trees surrounding the lodge, listening for birds. She's not as good at identifying their songs as she once was, but if she listens long enough, the names come back. She wears her 84 years well. Her grey hair is cut short and her bangs curl toward her forehead. The top button is buttoned on a flowered blouse. Most of her family is here, 2 sons and a daughter and 3 grandchildren. Her sister Louise will arrive soon. Lucy spots a man walking down the pavement toward the lodge. He is bearded and wearing a large backpack covered by a rain tarp. The man is soaking wet when he steps inside. He doesn't remove his pack but stands near the door and shakes water from his hands. Lucy waves and the man smiles back. "Did you come from the trail?" she asks. "Yes, ma'am," the man says, "just now." "I'm Lucy Gatewood Seeds," Lucy says as the man approaches. "Grandma Gatewood was my mother." "You're kidding," the man says, reaching out his hand. "I read about your mama and I just couldn't believe it. It just really moved me." Lucy smiles. "She did it 3 times, right?" the man asks. 2 through hikes and 1 in sections, Lucy replies. "And she went from Mount Oglethorpe, not Springer Mountain, where the trail starts today, so it was a little longer." "She's one of the big reasons I'm here," he says. "I'm Stats." "Hi, Stats," she says. "I'm Lucy." She hugs the wet man like it doesn't matter. "Grandma Gatewood," he says. "That's a name I haven't forgotten." Stats' real name is Chris Odom, and he's a physicist and former rocket scientist who now teaches physics at a Quaker boarding school. This is his 87th day on the trail, and he decided to stay in the lodge near the halfway point because he's meeting his family soon. He first heard of the trail 22 years ago, in college, when he saw a map on the wall of his girlfriend's father's home. He asked about it, and the father sent him home with a 2-volume set of books about the AT. One of the stories was about Grandma Gatewood. Mrs. Emma Gatewood, better known along the trail as Grandma Gatewood, is probably the best known of all hikers who have completed the 2,000 miles of the Appalachian Trail, the story read. Almost every thru hiker has his favourite story about Grandma, which he has heard along the trail. She is the kind of personality about whom legends grow. He wants a photo with Lucy. They stand near the fireplace. "Now, what did you think?" he asks Lucy. "You were a grown woman when she set out. Were you worried?" No, Lucy says. "My mother was amazing. She started the spark for me 22 years ago," Stats says. "Your mum's story just captivated me." This is the amazing reality of Grandma Gatewood's legacy. Somehow her story became a motivating tale for those who came in contact with it, man or woman, regardless of generation. Her hikes brought attention to the trail like none before. That's true as well for Ken Buckeye Bordwell, wearing a long white beard and hiking boots, who introduces himself to Lucy. He first heard of the AT when his father read stories about Emma aloud at their home in Cincinnati. His father followed her progress in the newspapers, tuned into the old woman walking. In junior high school, Ken started to fantasize about setting out himself. "That was one of the things that put it in my mind and made me a sitting duck for the Appalachian Trail disease," he said. "There are certain ones among us who hear about the AT and then it's all over." He started chipping off sections of the trail in 1965 and completed his final section last summer. She helped many people become aware of the trail, Bordwell says. She may have been one of the greatest publicists the trail ever had. A single, elderly woman walking the whole thing? You can't buy publicity like that. Gene Espy, the second thru hiker, is here too. The old Boy Scout hadn't heard about Grandma Gatewood's hikes until the 1970s, but they impressed him. He had trail guides, to say nothing of his pup tent and solid backpacking gear. "I thought that was a pretty good trick that she was able to carry a pack on her shoulder like that," he said. "You need your hands for climbing and whatnot. I thought it was a pretty good trick." The reach of a story is hard to measure in any scientific way, but in the 20 years since the internet brought us connectivity, many hikers have taken to journaling online about their outdoor experiences, and a search of one of the popular hosting sites, trailjournals.com, turns up more Grandma Gatewood entries than you'd ever care to read. Some are calls to press forward. "Remember Grandma Gatewood," and that kind of thing. Others speak to a deeper influence. Back when I was just a kid, my family belonged to and was active in a group called the National Campers and Hikers Association. I met Grandma Gatewood when she was the guest of honour at the first NCHA convention that I attended with my parents and sister at Lake of the Ozarks State Park in Missouri, rode a hiker called Granny Franny. She led us kids on hikes around trails in the state park, and I really enjoyed this feisty old lady who hiked. When I grow up, I'm going to do that, I told myself. Over the years, the story of Grandma Gatewood has remained in my mind and served as an inspiration when I thought about all the reasons why I might not be able to do this hike, wrote a woman called Rocky. On the way up to the top of Mount Geo, I encountered the spirit of Grandma Gatewood, wrote Gator Gump. She approached me as I was gasping for breath and feeling faint. I recognised her immediately from old photographs. Among those who study the trail, those who know its history inside and out, her legacy is indelible. She drew a lot of attention to the Appalachian Trail, said Larry Luxemburg, author of Walking the Appalachian Trail. Her hikes inspired a lot of people. No matter how bad your hike is, how difficult the trail is, you could always point to Grandma Gatewood and say, well, she did it. Beyond the attention and beyond her well-documented criticism that prompted better maintenance and upkeep, her hikes crumbled the psychological barrier that existed between the American public and this long path through the wilderness. She introduced people to the AT, and at the same time she made the thru hike achievable. It didn't take fancy equipment, guidebooks, training or youthfulness. It took putting one foot in front of the other 5 million times. She boasted that she was the only one of the thru hikers of the trail that really roughed it, and she was probably right, Ed Garvey said before he died. She lacked most of the pieces of equipment that hikers consider absolutely essential, but she possessed that one ingredient, desire, in such full measure that she never really needed the other things. Many AT scholars, Luxemburg included, point to Garvey as the man who turned on America to the thru hike. It's true that his book, Appalachian Hiker, which offered practical advice, was popular. When he died in 1999, it was in its 3rd edition. The book, and Garvey's hike, also received a fair amount of attention from the popular press. Part of the reason so many point to Garvey's thru hike in 1970 and his subsequent book as an AT turning point is because the number of thru hikers began to rise significantly around the same time. From 1936 to 1969, only 59 completions were recorded. From 1970 to 1979, 760 completions were recorded, a huge spike. That doubled in the 1980s and doubled again in the 1990s. Nearly 6,000 people hiked the entire length of the AT between 2000 and 2009, and it all seemed to start with Garvey's book. But let's split hairs for a moment. In 1964, the year Emma Gatewood completed the entirety of the trail for the third time, 4 others finished as well. The following 3 years saw just 8 completions. Then in 1968, 6 hikers finished. In 1969, 10 finished. 10 more completed the trail in 1970, the year of Garvey's hike. The surprise comes in 1971 when that number doubles. 21 people completed 2,000-mile hikes that year, the most ever and more than double the number of 2,000-milers from the year before. Here's the thing. It wasn't until December the 1st, 1971, after those 21 hikes were finished, that Appalachian Hiker was released. So, with all due respect to the late Mr. Garvey, the spike started before his book. She opened the door of knowledge of the trail to the general public, said Robert Croyle, Membership Secretary for the Appalachian Trail Museum and an accomplished outdoorsman. Her hike brought attention to the trail that was sorely needed. Interest in the trail that she created caused interest in maintaining the trail, and that's carried on through today. She has become a folk icon and a symbol of the AT being for any American, said Laurie Pottiger, Information Services Manager for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. She's in a class by herself. Earl Schaefer has his own legacy, but in terms of a folk hero, she has a special place in AT history. Her story is immediately fascinating. Lucy Gatewood Seeds is here in Boiling Springs with her family because Grandma Gatewood is being inducted into the Appalachian Trail Hall of Fame. And in a way, Lucy is the keeper of the flame. She's the youngest of Emma's 4 surviving children, who have all lived good, long lives. Lucy has kept her mother's correspondence, journals and photographs. She makes copies of newspaper clippings and journal entries and puts together scrapbooks to share with those who are interested. She has lent to museums her inherited memorabilia, old shoes, Band-Aid tins and denim sacks. And she protects her mother's legacy. When Lucy learned that the author Bill Bryson had mentioned her mother in his best-selling book about the AT, she found the passage, then found it unflattering. Probably the most famous, certainly the most written about, of all through hikers was Emma Grandma Gatewood, Bryson wrote, who successfully hiked the trail twice in the late 60s despite being eccentric, poorly equipped and a danger to herself. She was forever getting lost. Lucy fired off a letter to the witty writer, who hiked only 39.5% of the AT himself. Eccentric, perhaps, but kindly, please. Lost, never. Just misdirected, she wrote. I hope you have the satisfaction of completing the trail someday. These are Lucy's moments. She was disheartened to learn that her mother wasn't in the inaugural Hall of Fame class, which included Myron Avery, Gene Espy, Ed Garvey, Benton Mackay, Arthur Perkins and Earl Schaefer. She let it be known. When the second class was announced, she was pleased. When I'm dead and gone, Emma told Lucy and Louise once, in a tone that was certain and not at all arrogant, they're going to erect monuments to me. She was right. In the Hall of Fame down the road, her wooden bust is on a mantel and a display case tells her story. She came to pioneer 3 separate groups of AT hikers, seniors, women and ultralight, a style of minimalist hiking, carrying as little gear as possible, which has recently come into vogue. She was even the inspiration for a lightweight rain cape that doubles as a shelter, the Gatewood Cape. She also remains in elite company. Nearly 4 decades after a third AT jaunt, just 8 women and 55 men have completed 3 2,000-mile hikes, according to Appalachian Trail Conservancy records. She was so proud of all she had done, and she had gotten so much public attention from it, said Louise, she figured that it was going to be noteworthy and people were going to remember her. When it's time for the ceremony, Lucy is ready. She has delivered versions of the same speech before, but this night is special. The hall at the Allenbury Resort Inn is packed with hikers, politicians and philanthropists, those with interest in preserving the AT for the next generation. They speak of the trail's importance and its tentative future, how development threatens and protecting the wilderness is in everyone's interest. When they began speaking of the pioneers, Larry Luxembourg talks about Emma. Most women would have been content to live out their lives in comfort, he says. Many call her the first thru-hiker celebrity, he says. She was a hiker for the ages, he says. Lucy is called to the podium. The crowd sits silently. People call her Grandma Gatewood, Lucy says, but I call her Mama. They still ask. Wherever Lucy goes, whenever Grandma Gatewood comes up in conversation, people want to know why she did what she did. No surprise there. The question in general has prompted at least one scholarly study in 2007 called Why Individuals Hike the Appalachian Trail, a qualitative approach to benefits. The researchers found that common reasons were the standard fare: being outdoors, hiking, the fun and enjoyment of life, warm relationships, physical challenge, camaraderie, solitude and survival. It's easy enough, I guess, to take Emma's various responses at face value. Maybe she never thought too long or hard about why she wanted to test herself against nature. Maybe the first time was a lark, as she said, or some primal need to see what was over the next hill, then the next. That might explain that first trip, but then she learned how difficult it was, how painful, how the rosy National Geographic article had been wrong. And she did it again, and again. That's where my understanding begins to fall short. We could, of course, leave it at her being eccentric, as Bill Bryson wrote, but that's far too easy an explanation. She did, after all, keep good company on the trail, making friends who were very glad to see her on her return, and not in some sideshow kind of way. She was well-read, well-spoken, and white gloves proper. It's true that she could twitch her gentility slightly to let you know you had done or said something of which she didn't approve. But to suggest she was eccentric is to suggest it would be strange for her to walk. We know that she couldn't drive and that it wasn't out of the ordinary for her to walk 5 or 10 miles to visit a friend in the course of her daily life. The long hikes were simply an extension of that, a means of getting from point A to point B. Eccentric? No. Lucy believes that her mother wanted to be the first woman to thru-hike the trail, and that's worth thinking about. A minor problem with that theory arises when you consider that the story that introduced her to the trail was written in 1949, 5 years before she set out for the first time in 1954. There's no indication that Emma saw or read anything about the trail in that span, so how would she have known whether another woman had completed the hike? Maybe Lucy is right in a general sense, but if being the first of her gender was the primary motivating factor, wouldn't she have made certain that no other woman had gone before her? I believe Emma Gatewood was honest. I also believe there's an equal chance that her stock answers were covers. They were honest and also incomplete responses to a question she couldn't bring herself to fully answer. Not when she was a widow. Not when she had a secret. Not when she had tasted her own blood, felt her ribs crack and seen the inside of a jail cell. To suggest she was trying to be the first woman means believing that she was walking towards something. I'm not sure that's wholly true. I'm not sure she was walking towards something so much as walking away. There's one response among the dozens that I've come to think best answers the question, a declarative sentence in the public record that is equal parts truth and defiance. It's a statement that betrays a secret at the same time. There's something both bold and hidden in the response, something beautiful and independent, mysterious and brave. There is escape between the words, escape from abuse and oppression, escape from age and obligation. It ends with a period that might as well be a question mark. 4 words that launch 1,000 ships, and it's an answer that frustrates and satisfies. Because, she told a reporter, I wanted to. Epilogue. Before dawn on the 3rd Saturday of January 2013, I drove Louise Gatewood Lamotte from a condominium north of Columbus, Ohio, to Hocking Hills State Park, a few hours southeast. When we arrived, the lots surrounding the park were filling and families began piling out of cars and forming lines, beside 3 or 4 school buses, which, when filled, ferried them down the hill to the trailhead. The morning was downright cold, near freezing, and the hikers came prepared. They were bundled head to toe in the best gear: Patagonia, Columbia, the North Face, Eagle Creek, Camelback. Keys dangled from carabiners and ski poles hung from wrists. They stuffed chemical hand warmers into their pockets. I watched a middle-aged man and woman sit and strap spike contraptions on the bottoms of their shoes like snow chains for hiking boots. Louise, God love her, was wearing a grey jacket, slacks and low-top Nike sneakers. I don't think I'll need my gloves, she said as we climbed out of the rental. She'll be 87 in 2 months, and as much as I wanted to, I wasn't going to second-guess her. My daughters treat me like a child, she had told me a few times before, more of a statement to me than an indictment of them. When I flew into Columbus, it honestly hadn't occurred to me that she might want to accompany me to Hocking Hills. I'd simply called to say hello and see if I might swing by to visit before heading down to the 48th annual winter hike. But she insisted, and here she stood in the cold, clutching her mother's skinny stick. 40 years after Grandma Gatewood's last winter hike, her daughter was not going to miss it. The other thing I hadn't expected was the crowd. I'm a fan of state parks and I visit them often. I've seen full campsites at beautiful Big Bend down in southwest Texas and packed freshwater springs on hot Florida afternoons. But I've never in my life seen this many people occupy one park at the same time. The scene, minus the camouflage overalls and checkerboard hunting caps, looked like a rock concert. Thousands had come, young and old, skinny and obese. Cars were packed on the grass in all directions. Walking down a single row, I saw license plates from West Virginia, Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky, and strangely, New Mexico. I half expected to find a carnival stand selling funnel cakes. We stood in the cold for 30 minutes before we could get on one of the buses. When we got to the trailhead, there was a line. I can't emphasise this enough. To get onto the trail near Old Man's Cave, there was a queue like you'd find at the most popular roller coaster at an amusement park. People were waiting on the buses, then waiting at the trailhead 100 deep to take a walk, to see nature, to descend from level ground down to Old Man's Cave, to a geographically secretive underground world with these huge Jurassic Park-like trees, these gorgeous waterfalls, and blackhand sandstone recesses made slowly, particle by particle, over thousands of years. That morning, I guessed out loud that there were 3,000 others walking with us. I'd learned later that 4,305 people showed up to hike 6 miles. Think about that for a minute. Many of them wore patches that said, Grandma Gatewood Hike. A big boulder was planted at the trailhead where the clogged line waited for a bottleneck to clear. A large metal plaque affixed to the rock said, Grandma Gatewood Memorial Trail. This 6-mile trail is dedicated to the memory of Grandma Gatewood, a vibrant woman, seasoned hiker, and long-time Hocking Hills enthusiast. The path begins here, visits Cedar Falls, and terminates at Ash Cave, January the 17th, 1981. I thought of what Louise had told me about her mother. When I'm dead and gone, Emma said, they're going to erect monuments to me. She knew. The Grandma Gatewood Trail has come to be part of the cross-state 1,200-mile Buckeye Trail, part of the 4,600-mile Federal North Country Trail that runs from New York to North Dakota, and part of the American Discovery Trail that covers 6,800 miles from Delaware to California. We slowly and carefully snaked into the gorge, down a series of slopes and worn steps set in stone, as trail volunteers sprinkled rock salt at our feet to melt the snow and ice. Even in a crowd, this felt like sacred ground. There was no question why Emma liked this place so much, why she thought it was the most interesting geographical feature she'd seen. Old Man's Cave is a recess in the side of a cliff, about 75 feet above the rushing stream. And it's big, 250 feet long and about 50 feet high. You might have to put me on your back, Louise said. I was ready to, but she braved the stone steps and icy bridges like a younger woman. I imagined her mother doing the same thing on her final hike, with men reaching out to steady her, to carry her over the rough patches. Thinking of that scene makes me whimper. We had spoken with a man in line earlier who had participated in this same hike for more than 30 years. He couldn't explain what keeps him coming back, but I think I know. I think I know why Louise insisted on coming, and I think I know why I booked a plane ticket on a moment's notice, just 24 hours before. I think I know why all these people line up by that big plaque on the boulder every year and funnel, baby step by baby step, onto the Grandma Gatewood Trail. To be here is to participate in an experience, her experience. To walk this path that she loved is to embrace her memory, to come as close to her as possible. To see what she saw and step where she stepped and feel some thin connection to a farm woman who decided one day to take a walk and then kept going, getting faster until the end. I could be imagining all this, but I lost myself a little. In her footsteps, I forgot my troubles. Maybe the fountain of youth wasn't a fountain at all. Louise made it over her mother's trail just fine. I held her arm through the ice patches, but she didn't need it. I drove her back to Columbus, and we agreed to do it again next year.